Charles Darwin was born in 1809 and he passed away in 1882. Many people know that he was the person who created the theory of evolution and the theory of natural selection, but not many people know the history behind the theory's evolution. Charles Darwin embarked on the HMS Beagle on the 27th of December 1831, and this trip lasted about 5 years to October 2nd, 1836. The purpose of this round-the-world trip was so that Darwin and his crew members could collect samples that would help Charles in his research about the origin of species. The HMS Beagle arrived at Santa Cruz on January 6, 1832, but due to a disease outbreak in England, Darwin and his crew were not allowed to leave the ship and embark the island because it would have put the inhabitants of the island at risk of getting the disease. This was a big disappointment for Darwin because Santa Cruz was one of the islands that he was very anxious to embark, and this seemed like a missed opportunity. When Darwin reached the Galapagos Islands, he really began to connect the theories together. He noticed that there were these birds named finches, which really solidified his theory of evolution and natural selection. The beaks of the finches were tailored to the environment that they lived in. Obviously, those birds were not the only ones that lived there earlier on, but with the theory of natural selection, it was concluded that only those birds with the right beaks for that environment survived. For example, say one species of birds lived on an island that only had fruit as their food supply. That bird would have to have sharp beaks to be able to pierce the fruit and eat it. And all the other birds would have died because they would have not been able to eat the fruit. And in that way, since every island was unique, the beaks of the finches were unique. And Darwin used this evidence to aid him in proving the theory of natural selection. Along with the finches, another animal that the naturalist was particularly interested in was the giant tortoise. He noticed that similar tortoises were found in both South America and Africa, which led him to conclude that some of the tortoise from one of the three regions must have migrated by accident to another region, and over time, due to natural selection, the tortoise evolved to what it needed for its unique niche. What Darwin had concluded also went in hand with the idea of common descent. On the islands, some tortoises were adapted to the lowland, grassy areas, while on the other islands, still in the Galapagos, some tortoises were adapted with a longer neck and higher shell to retrieve higher ground food such as cacti. This shows you again how this helped Darwin prove his theory of evolution and common descent. While these two tortoises were vastly different due to the environments that they inhabited, they still came from the same tortoise due to common descent. This fact also falls into the idea of selective breeding, which was done entirely by humans. It was after the publication of his book, The Origin of Species, in 1859, that Charles really began to encounter conflicts with the Catholic Church. You see, in the Catholic religion, the theory of evolution and natural selection are unheard of, and therefore it went against the ideology of the New Testament, as were many other scientific theories. The theory did not only impact England, where he lived, but after only some years, the idea of evolution and survival of the fittest had been known around the world. One prime example was in America during the Gilded Age. The theory of evolution played a role in justifying why there were only few wealthy men. Modern Darwinism stated that only those who were fit enough got to be wealthy, and this ideology helped men like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Morgan avoid some conflict regarding their enormous wealth. Darwin's ideology, now referred to as Darwinism, also sparked some conflict with the legal system in the United States. In the early 20th century, educating students on the subject of evolution was illegal, but that did not stop a school teacher in Tennessee from doing exactly that. This is referring to the now famous Scopes trial held in 1925. John Thomas Scopes was being convicted of a crime that people today would think is ridiculous. He was teaching his students about Darwin's theory, which was strictly illegal in the state of Tennessee. When put to trial, the case caused a large wave of controversy throughout the whole country. As, as expected, many Catholics wanted Scopes to face the charges, namely William Jennings Bryan. As a result of the court case, Scopes was charged $100. The main conflict with this case was that it sparked a nationwide debate over the issue of Darwinism and the reliability of Catholicism. Of course, there are still doubts in many people's minds that evolution is not real, but regardless, Darwin's theory has left a large mark on modern science and the way we think of life. Even today, there are still scientists trying to further prove the theory's legitimacy, and there are still people of faith who doubt the findings of Darwin.